I've made it no secret that I just thought it was in poor taste for you to continue with the pre-Grammy party when Whitney's body was still upstairs in the hotel room. Remember, Whitney passed away the same day as Clive, your annual party. But do you feel as though there was more that you could have done, like cut off her money supply or something?
You know, you always go through that in-depth analysis.
Yeah.
That's about it. Okay, 2 hours a day is for you. 2 hours a day. I have to. I'm just saying love it because I can't.
Where did he go on?
Of course, this is a personal thing, but the Grammys were the next night. You don't cancel. You turn an evening into a tribute.
You did a magnificent evening.
Into.
Did you give a thought to canceling?
Never.
You never thought?
Never.
Did you ever think?
And the family did not want me to give a thought.
Didn't?
No.
Because I was so terrorized by him. Whether he meant to do it or not, I'll never know. But he sure taught me that if you try to terrorize me again, well, we can't say that on public radio. What I may do to someone who tries to hurt me again in this business, I'm not having it. I should be respected as I respect, and I will not have someone try to ruin my spirit and ruin my career.
With Crusty Davis out of the way, Wendy Williams is finally opening up for the first time since her guardianship, and she's claiming that he allegedly pulled strings to get her into a facility. Apparently, he did this after finding out what Wendy knows about his involvement in Whitney's death. In fact, she seemingly tried to tell us about it when she publicly dragged him for filth on her show, while he was literally sitting across from her. Now, of course, he didn't crash out about it on camera, but according to Wendy, he felt away and has been relentlessly trying to destroy her life. If you thought the whole conservatorship situation was shady as hell, well, it looks like you might have been onto something the entire time. Now, as y'all know, Wendy was a big problem for these industry executives back in the day, all the way from Oprah, Diddy, and even Clive Davis. So it wasn't really surprising when she ended up losing her show, got sick out of nowhere, and got thrown into a guardianship she had no business being in. Now, when Whitney was still alive, still going through her never-ending struggles with substances, Wendy was one of the few people who were very hard on her. And even though it initially looked like she was just trying to trash talk Whitney, sources are now saying that the real reason she was going so hard on Whitney was because she knew that they were planning to take her out so they could have full access to her estate, and the best way they could cover it up was to use her addiction as the cause of her death. One of the times she tried to warn Whitney about Clive's plans to use her addiction to cover up her death was back in 2003, when they had that explosive back and forth during a radio interview. Whitney got very defensive during that interview because she thought Wendy was deliberately bringing up her substance issues just to rub it in her face. But looking back, Wendy was really just trying to save her life. No shade. Just listen to this, y'all.
You don't know what the allowance. You don't make me curse on the radio. I'm not trying to be, come on.
Well, Steve was saying it was from about like $1,600 a week to about $500 a week.
I want you to kiss my
Okay. He
and
also...
so can anybody else ever think I'd do that to my mother, you low down dirty.
You're very defensive, Whitney.
I have to be, Wendy. You talk about me every day.
Well, Whitney,
every other day.
Whitney, you keep yourself in the headlines.
No, Wendy, y'all keep me in the headlines. I mind my business. I try to maintain what I got. I want to know what I'm doing all the time. I don't give a shit about what you're doing all the time. As long as you're healthy and God is blessing you and you're doing the right thing and being a decent person, I can handle that.
Now, Wendy had been in the game for years at that point and reported on multiple celebrities going out exactly how Whitney did. So she wasn't just talking just to talk. She knew exactly what she was talking about. In fact, Wendy herself also struggled with substance addiction at one point in her life, just like Whitney did. But she got her ish together as soon as she clocked that folks in the industry were usually taken out once they started pissing off the wrong people, and their addiction was usually used to cover it up.
Have you ever used drugs?
No.
Well, I have. It's been many years. I can laugh about it now, too. It's the stupidest thing I ever did in my life, But I am familiar with every form of cocaine, and including crack and that whole bit. And I have to tell you that when I saw this picture right here, show that other picture of Whitney. I remember that girl, sweaty, hair in the face, grown. I remember that girl very well. I wrote the book and everything. and I can own up to my mistakes. Whitney, you need more than outpatient.
Yes.
I don't believe you were sober on Oprah. I don't believe that you went into rehab voluntarily this time. What I do believe is that Whitney, because I was watching Inside Edition yesterday. No, walk with me on this one, okay? On Inside Edition, they said that Whitney just signed on for Waiting to Exhale 2. Well, you know what happens with these Hollywood people. You have to be insurable.
That's right.
You know, you have to be insurable and bankable. And nobody's insuring this.
Right.
So clean it up.
But it didn't stop there. You see, even after Whitney's death, Clive was doing some shady things that pretty much confirmed to everyone what kind of time he was on. And guess who was among the first people to call him out? While everyone was scared to, because they didn't want him ruining their careers. Wendy. Okay, so as most of y'all know, Whitney died on February 11th, 2012, in room 434 at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills. The same hotel. And the same night, Clive was hosting his annual pre-Grammy gala. She was booked into the room under her grandmother's name, Elizabeth Collins. According to Whitney's assistant, Mary Jones, Whitney was taking a bath while she ran an errand to Neiman Marcus, leaving the room around 3 p.m. When she returned around 3:35 p.m., she found Whitney face down in the tub, submerged in about a foot of water. The report said, and I quote, Whitney's assistant, Mary Jones, found her face down in a water-filled bath with 2 superficial abrasions to the left side of her forehead. She was also found with a red fluid purge coming from her nose, and with a superficial abrasion to the left side of the bridge of her nose. Whitney's longtime bodyguard, Ray Watson, who'd been stationed in the hallway, rushed in moments later and pulled her out, attempting to revive her, but it was too late. Hotel security called 911 at 3:43 p.m., and paramedics, who were already in the building because of Clive's party. CPR was performed at the scene, but she was pronounced dead. But as I said, our girl was already a goner by that point.
When they did her autopsy, they said there was nothing wrong with her throat. Her lungs were so damaged that she couldn't fuel the notes. It was her lungs. It wasn't, her voice was fine.
Oh.
That's how Clive did it. And then the next thing you know, she's Ray J. And then it's Grammy time.
That happened.
And her and Clive had a fight 2 days before. And from what I was told, Bobbi Kristina was present for some of that fight. And then the next thing you know, she's dead. Ray J was the last person to see her alive. He let the drug dealer in, but she was sober, right? But he let the drug dealer in that gave her the shot.
But here's where things go from bad to just straight up demonic. So while investigators were upstairs trying to revive Whitney, folks were crying and trying to figure out exactly how she died. Clive, who was very much aware of the situation upstairs, was still going on with his pre-Grammy party as planned. Like the woman whose life he had so deeply influenced, the dead body wasn't still in the building. And as you can, a lot of people were not here for this, including Wendy. She actually dragged Clive onto her show and directly called him out for still going on with the party. Now, it's one thing to slam someone as powerful as Clive, but to do it to his face, even after you've probably been told by your producers behind the scenes not to press him about it on camera, is very bold. But guess what Clive's response was? This man sat there and said he had already invited a bunch of A-listers and people from the royal family, and that he couldn't cancel it just because Whitney died. He was clearly more concerned about the A-list guests he was able to pull, instead of the fact that Whitney had literally just died. And remember what I said about Wendy wanting Whitney to get help so her addiction wouldn't be used to cover up her death? Well, she also boldly questioned Clive about this, asking him why he didn't do more to get Whitney help. Instead, he watched her struggle on her own for years.
But do you feel as though there was more that you could have done, like cut off her money supply or something?
You know, you always go through that in-depth analysis.
Yeah.
I met with her in my home. I had spent a weekend when Bobbi was in jail.
Did you like Bobbi?
I never had much to do with Bobbi. I don't think Bobbi was the cause of her problems. I think they had a codependent, somewhat unhealthy love relationship. But I did meet with her, like you and I are talking right now.
Yes.
And
that's not enough. Did you have people come in and want to tie her up and take her to a rehab, lock her away for a moment or something?
Wendy didn't just slam Clive for the party. She also went on to make some disturbing claims, alluding to Clive allegedly also working with some goons to end Whitney's life over a $1.5 million debt she was rumored to be owing to a substance ring on the East Coast. Now, this whole rumor actually started with private investigator Paul Hubel. And baby, he was not just some random person person on the internet running his mouth. He was a former cop who had worked on high-profile celebrity cases, and according to him, Whitney Houston did not just accidentally drown in that bathtub. Paul claimed Whitney was allegedly taken out over a huge unpaid debt she supposedly owed to East Coast suppliers. According to him, these people had been pressing her for weeks before she died, and the day before her passing, she allegedly got a fresh delivery right there at the Beverly Hilton. According to his investigation, two shady-looking men were caught on hotel surveillance, blending in with Whitney's entourage and making their way toward her suite during a small window of time when she was alone. Paul believes that when Whitney either couldn't pay or refused to pay, things allegedly got physical. He also claimed Whitney had marks on her body that looked like defensive wounds, but according to him, the official report didn't really focus on that the way it should have. He believed whoever confronted Whitney held her under the water until she stopped fighting, then staged the whole scene to make it look like another relapse. And the crazy thing is, Whitney's daughter also died in an eerily similar way to Whitney, leading people to believe that Clive allegedly had her taken out too, in order to complete whatever alleged ritual he started when he supposedly took Whitney out. You see, on January 31st, 2015, almost 3 years after Whitney died, Bobbi Kristina was found face down and unresponsive in a bathtub at her Georgia home she shared with boyfriend Nick Gordon. Nick and a friend found her, called 911, and began CPR before paramedics arrived, but she never regained consciousness, spending nearly 6 months in a coma before dying on July 26, 2015, at just 22. Her autopsy found the underlying cause of death was lobar pneumonia, resulting from her face being submerged in water while intoxicated on multiple plus hypoxic brain damage from oxygen deprivation. But unlike her mother's death, hers was not ruled a simple accident. The medical examiner labeled the manner of death undetermined, unable to establish whether the substance intoxication and submersion were accidental or intentional. Her estate later filed a wrongful death lawsuit, alleging Nikki gave her a toxic cocktail that rendered her unconscious, then put her face down in cold water, causing the brain damage that ultimately killed her. Nick obviously denied wrongdoing. No criminal charges were ever filed against him, and he ended up dying of a drug overdose in 2020 before the civil case reached resolution. And get this, it was later revealed in Whitney's Lifetime documentary that Whitney had actually saved Bobbi Kristina from an earlier near drowning in a bathtub, just one night before Whitney's own death. And Whitney reportedly told friends afterward to stay away from the water. The water is evil. Apparently, Whitney knew Clive was trying to end her and Bobbi with water, and then use their substance problems to cover it up. Unfortunately, none of that worked because they both ended up losing their lives in the exact same ways. And according to Whitney's husband, Bobby Brown, he believes Whitney and Bobbi's death were planned by a higher up in the industry for alleged ritualistic reasons.
So you believe that there was foul play in Bobbi Kristina's
Definitely.
death? Got it.
Like
all
that
right.
maybe he her?
Definitely.
Wow.
Okay.
He was the only one there with both situations, with my ex-wife and with my daughter.
Now, as I said, this is all alleged information. Not if any of what Wendy is alleging is true, then Whitney's case needs to be reopened and investigated again. In the meantime, people had their thoughts, like this person who said, Wendy, she said what we all thought, and we weren't in the minority. That pre-Grammy party going on with her body in the building was more than bad taste. And how did they plan tributes much, given it was the day of her death, too? Another person said, I'm glad Wendy stood up to Clive. But now I want to know your thoughts. What do you think about Wendy going off about the alleged ritual that happened at Clive's party the night Whitney died? And do you really think it's time to reopen Whitney's case? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to click here to watch this other messy video.